Hello, and thank you for joining us today on Best Practices for Water Use Reduction in HOA Landscapes. My name is Meg Mason. I'm Senior Director of Marketing at HydroPoint. Thanks for joining us today. We are going to be recording this session, and everyone will get a copy of the recording once the webinar is finished. We will also be answering any questions at the end of the session. So at any time, if you have any questions, just enter it into the questions section in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to those at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and get things started. I'd like to introduce you guys to Ben Slick, our SVP of Business Development here at HydroPoint. So Ben, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Meg. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another weekly chat. So as a reminder to those who haven't met us, HydroPoint Data Systems is the maker of WeatherTrack and also a service called Water Compass. We're an outcome services company, and we focus our solutions for water use efficiency on customers that want to either reduce or take out expense or improve efficiency for their workforce. We've been in business since 2002, and our sole commitment is to helping people improve their water use efficiency projects. Today, we're spoiled. We've got two industry experts to talk to us today about managing water on an HOA. Matt Davenport, who's the Chief Encouragement Officer at Monarch Environmental, and Ignacio Chavez, Division President at Harvest Landscape Enterprises. Guys, thanks both for joining us.
Thanks, Ben.
Matt, I'd like to start with you as CEO of Monarch Environmental. It doesn't start with Chief Executive Officer, but it's Chief Encouragement Officer. Tell us about that and a little bit about how you got to Monarch.
Sure. Thanks for having me, first of all. Appreciate your whole team putting this together. So Chief Encouragement Officer, so one of the benefits of owning your own company is you can promote yourself whenever you want. So I used to be the president of Monarch, and actually at the beginning of this pandemic, I felt like one of my roles just in the industry was to encourage people. So I promoted myself to Chief Encouragement Officer, and part of that is obviously encouraging our clients, contractors, but doing posts on LinkedIn and other, social networks, just to encourage people. So in terms of how I got here, it's a great question. It's, you remember the book, the Dr. Seuss, the places you go. I've been on a winding road ever since graduating from the University of Wisconsin, go Badgers. But was in a landscape maintenance company in that role for about 10 years right after college, and ended up 2008 starting Monarch. So not a great time to start the business, but it taught me a lot, and it's really where I got to know Ignacio, who you're going to meet in a minute, and then and here we are. So appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, great. As a fellow Big Ten, go green. Happy to have you here.
Oh, I got sorry.
Let's switch over to Ignacio. Ignacio, as current division president at Harvest, I know you've had a long career there as a laborer at 17 years ago, and then moving up to division president. Talk a little bit about your background and how you got to this place.
Yeah, it's a long story, but to make it shorter, yeah, I always tell this story to everybody. Like, it's been tough, and it was really tough, especially when you don't speak the language, like I was talking to you earlier. But just the mentality that I have, and that I've been kind of wanted for all my career is just work hard, just make it happen. Like always, it's like always said, being consistent and just like being there when we need to resolve the problems and when we need to show the customer what we provide. So it's and actually in '99 when I started working with Steve's, which is actually Steve's dad's Harvest, the owner of Harvest, and I was working with him for like 3 years, and after that I was working at regular foreman. After that I got promoted as a account manager at that time. And it's funny because when I got the opportunity to be an account manager, it was with also Palate Greenbelt, which is when I met Matt, and it's funny, and I've been saying this, like I consider Matt as my friend because we've been in this industry together. He started his company as a consultant, and I started my career as a as account manager. And then since then, oh my God, it's a lot of things happening, good things for, I think, for both, for him and for me and for Harvest. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah. So.
Awesome. So Matt, let's talk a little bit more about Monarch Environmental. And for those that don't know what a management consultant is in this industry, help everybody get up to speed.
Sure. So Monarch Environmental is, we're a third-party horticulture consulting company. And I know that's a mouthful, but really what we're doing is we provide accountability and expertise to our clients. We really provide 5 services. We offer water management, design, project management, arborist reports, and then our kind of core business is day-to-day operations. So we oversee the landscape, say at the client that Ignacio just mentioned, Osa Valley Greenbelt, by tracking every expense, make sure every plant that was planted is in the ground, is doing well. So we're really able to be that sort of, I always relate it to if you're walking into a mechanic, you wish you had someone like a Monarch person walking in saying, I don't know that you need those brakes, or yes, you do need those brakes. So we're really there as an accountability partner for and with the contractor. But even more so, we feel like 2 heads are better than one, and so we really build teams. That's a big mission for us, is to work alongside the contractor. We don't pretend to know everything or everything better. We really try to improve and increase what's already being offered by the contractor.
And your focus on the market is HOA in particular, correct?
Yeah, I would say it's probably 90% of our business is homeowner associations. Absolutely.
Yep. Ignacio, tell us more about Harvest and the HOAs that you service. What kind of things do you do for them to make them successful?
Oh, but technically we just do everything. Sometimes, like we start since we get an HOA, we do like inspection from the top to the bottom of the HOA, and sometimes it's like the clients even requests like, can you guys fix this sidewalk that is a little small piece that you can even correct immediately, which we help them with that as well. But literally irrigation, plant material, trees, with irrigation, hardscape, we do technically everything.
Ignacio, you mentioned that you and Matt have history together. I mean, with that, what kind of history are you talking about? I mean, what have you guys done at the beginning of when you met, and what are you doing today? Is it the same or is it different?
Things change a little bit. I mean, Matt got more important now. He's more important. He doesn't want to talk to me, not like a lot, but I get it. He's in a better position now, and I totally understand. I'm just kidding, Matt. Well, we're working and we have a really good relationship, and since then we work in different projects, just not in Osa Valley Greenbelt. We used to work in another community in Ocean Ranch, which started a big project. We did a really good things there. We save a lot of water. We improve in general the landscape for that community, and another communities as well. So we always talk about what is the benefit of the HOA of the community. What is the plan for the future? We always have goals, and we just like I said, we make it happen.
So, Matt, talk a little bit about the relationship that landscape contracting firms have with Monarch or consultants in general. I mean, it sounds like there could be potential for both collaboration as well as competition.
Yeah, first of all, I do want to clarify that I do think I am more important. That's not for Ignacio on that.
Understood. Yeah, we saw the billboard, so we get it.
Do you have a competition, Matt?
No, so I wouldn't say that we compete at all with the contractor. I think the role, that's a really good question, Ben, is I see it a couple different ways, and I want to include the board of directors in this too. The board of directors really provides direction. They say, for example, we want to improve water efficiency. And then you have at the center of a triangle, kind of the center of that, you'd have the community manager who sort of acts as, the facilitator. And then we're on like the left side of that triangle, really coming up with a plan. How are we going to become more water efficient? And then on the other side is the implementer, which is the contractor. So, in any good team, there's always going to be some conflict. I mean, I think that's healthy. that you're actually, there's some disagreement and there's some things you work through, because that's what gets you to the right answer. But you know, I would say this, I get asked a lot, like, oh, who's your favorite contractor? You know, and I don't have a favorite contractor. I'm a human being, I'm very relational. I have favorite people within the contracting company. So a logo really doesn't mean a whole lot to me. You know, and Ignacio is one of those people that I just, what makes him different is the fact that he's a doer. He gets it done, you know, and he just has always been that way. And what's been really cool to see is that we've sort of grown parallel, where his knowledge, expertise, and obviously his career path has been, you know, just a huge uptick, and that's really, really fun to see. So, yeah.
So you guys are both experts in this whole business of making HOA common area landscapes look great. Let's talk about challenges. You know, what do you see as challenges and what do you do about them?
Go ahead, Ignacio.
And I mean, number one challenge I think is going to be irrigation, you know, because that's the most important thing in landscape. You know, that's one of the challenges. And the plant material, I mean, do we have the right plant material in the HOA? Trees, you know, do we have the trees? The trees got planted in the right location? There's, you know, there's a lot of challenges, but I think those are going to be the most popular ones.
Yeah, I would add.
Those are certainly technical challenges, but Matt, aren't there also political challenges in managing that relationship with the board and the management company and the landscaper?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is, I mean, you know, people are different, right? It just as a general rule. So, and then and board of directors or HOA boards often can attract a certain type of person, not always, but and you know, they would typically have a, you know, a goal that they would like to accomplish as a person on that board. And I think a huge challenge is bringing a group of, I mean, try this anywhere in your life. Try to get 5, you know, relative strangers to agree on one common goal. It's pretty hard. Just look at where we are nationally, right? So I think that to me is, people are always the biggest challenge and the greatest reward, but you have to be able to have some wins along the way to show them, and that's what builds momentum. But yeah, to me, the biggest challenge, the landscape, you know, the landscape's talking to you, but it doesn't really yell at you. It's you're really on the other side of things. It's challenging the board. So, and you know, that group of people, but they, you know, we've had some tremendous relationships with boards as well. So I don't want to say it's all bad. It's just a huge opportunity there.
So how do you get brought in typically to the HOA? Do you come in through the landscape committee? Do you come in through the management company? You know, how does that work?
Typically it's through the community management company. And so, you know, we've had success over here. Maybe this would be a good fit here. And so that's typically how but it has come from all, you know, all different sides. You know, our marketing or growth has all been organic, just word of mouth. And so that's why we put so much focus on just doing a good job rather than trying to grow. So.
And Ignacio, as you interact with people in the HOA, it's not necessarily the board or even the management company, but maybe it's people who own a home outside the area that's being landscaped, or maybe it's the landscape subcommittee representative. I mean, talk about your experiences in just managing that dynamic.
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I interact with the manager, the property manager, interact with the board and homeowners. You know, it's just they go together. So, and it's challenging, but I think when you have the time to educate them, you know, and just tell them, you know, this is the way that we should go, and explain to them why, and most of them understand that.
So when you're account managers, which you were an account manager, so when you go and bid new work, when you try to bring on a new client, you know, how do you assess what their needs are, and how do you assess based on the bid what you can accomplish for them to make their community more attractive? How do you go about that?
What I do, I just, you know, sometimes, or most of the times, we get like notifications like, oh, this is a new community that is looking for a new contractor, right? So we go and I just go one time. I just go like multiple times. We look for the type of again, like what's around, what is working, what is not working. And sometimes I love designing. I like to do renderings a lot because it's what I do. So sometimes I just take a picture of one corner that is like, oh, this is the focal point for this community. No, it should be better, you know. And I take a picture, I put plans together, and how about this? If we include those renderings, those recommendations in the package, we say, do you like this? This is what we can do. And a lot of things, it's just a long list.
Yeah. So a good-looking landscape obviously impacts curb appeal and property values and how people feel about the community they live in, right? So how do you go about helping them either appreciate the aesthetic they've got, or how do you figure out what aesthetic they want and then get them to that place? Maybe Matt, you can start first, and then we'll have Ignacio follow.
Yeah, well, I think, I blame HGTV, because as soon as HGTV came on, all of a sudden every homeowner was an expert, in landscape. And people pay for what they don't understand, right? You're willing to do some things, but you may not touch the electrical kind of idea. So in terms of landscape, one of the challenges is and this gets to your question about how do you improve things, is it's very subjective. Well, I think that looks nice. Or what do you want us to do? Just make it look better. What does that mean? Well, I want it more lush. What do you mean by lush? So it's a lot of very fluffy, subjective words. And so in terms of, it's really the first challenge is getting out of the board what they want, because they don't want better trimmed or tightly trimmed acacia necessarily. It's not really what they want. They think they want that, but through a series of assessing and photos and and talking water usage and kind of putting their whole community on a scale, you're able to sort of prioritize for them to say, here's what you need, based on what your community is saying, and the plants are talking to you, right? So let's pick on the acacia again. The acacia is dying out. That's a need. We need to have a plan to do that. So I think what it takes is just, it does take some expertise to have that conversation with them, and then also have these board of directors actually tell you what they want. You'd be shocked. I always say that there's no bad, if a contractor is fulfilling the contract and you're not happy, you have a bad contract. If the contractor is not performing and they're not fulfilling the contract, you have a bad contractor. So, the contract is sort of the constitution of the community, and most of the times it really reflects the vagueness of what the board is giving them. So having a very clear definition and contract that outlines your goals and expectations is really, really important.
So Ignacio and Matt both, who actually does the plant palette selection? So let's say the board says, we want to spruce it up. How does the decision of which plants get planted in what quantity and what density and where, water use versus, native and versus invasive? How do you make those decisions together?
It's, just to get to a plant palette, again, it just depends on the community. If there's in the slope, it's what are we going to be planting that plant material? The slope and the flat areas in front of the houses. It has a lot of things that we need to consider. But what we work and what we do is just put together a plant palette that we think, like in this case, sometimes Monarch and myself or Harvest, we just put a plant palette together that we think that is going to work out. We meet together with the board. This is the plan that we recommended, because this type of plant material, we can plant it, 15 feet in center instead of this one that we can plant it, 3 feet in center. Just thinking about, saving money for the community as well. And they just going on with that. This is in front of the houses. This is going to be blooming more. This is more attractive. It's just combination of consulting and landscape company and the board of directors.
Yeah. Matt, as you advise the boards, do you also help them understand the consequences of the plant palettes they pick? For example, things maybe need more pruning than others, more maintenance, year round as opposed to once or twice a year. Do you get into that conversation with them?
Yes, and I one of the things that sort of parlays into this conversation too is oftentimes when we're being interviewed or something, they say we want to save water, and I usually tell them I can save you 100% of your water, like right now, and we're just going to go turn off your system, and that's how we'll do that for you. That's obviously not what they're after, right? So I think a good little mental picture for boards is to, if we did turn off the water for a week, what would start browning out first? You have the turf probably, and we're in Southern California, so probably the Tecomeria, and then you have this, right? And you kind of can mentally go down a checklist. that's an easy way to sort of identify what are the really water thirsty plants. In terms of labor, absolutely. I mean, we get requests, and Ignacio does this too. We want something that grows and really fills in fast. Okay, so you want to have something that you're maintaining that all the time. And yeah, we have definitely taken into account the labor, rates and what's going to take to maintain that plant. And again, that is something that really goes under the radar in terms of doing replanting projects, is not calculating what is the long-term cost of maintaining that. And then in plant choices, again, it'd be easy to say, yeah, let's put all these native plants in here. Well, some clients would call that desert, right? And I always sort of jokingly, seriously call it California couture, right? So it's like if you go down to the resorts and in and around Southern California, it's all these native plants. So there's some misnomers, but you can't walk in there with, a puntia cactus and say we're going to put this everywhere. That's not the case. It's really got to be a blend of sort of that Mediterranean, and ultimately, if you were redoing your house, Ben, you're the designer. You're gonna have someone come in, but then you're gonna say, I really want this or I really want that. So I think our job, both Harvest and and then when we've worked together specifically, has been presenting options that represent reasonable labor rates and water, and then having them design it by saying, what do you like? So I think that's the general approach.
Yeah, and as a homeowner, you can experiment by going to the local nursery, and picking something and try to make it work. And if it doesn't, you wasted $8 or $12 or whatever your 1 gallon was. But when you got 2 acres of maintenance to do, that's a scalable problem if you don't do it right. Ignacio, you're an expert designer and you're passionate about renovations. I mean, let's talk about maintenance of this stuff. I mean, do you have any best practices you can share with the audience about how to maintain newly planted landscape?
Newly planted, I mean, first of all, we have to kind of let it establish the plant material, and I think it goes together with the plant palette. So we always recommend a plant material that is not gonna be, that we have to maintain it, every 2 weeks. So we always just, say, you know what, this is gonna be spreading too fast. Let's just put it in open areas. Let's put this one. This is gonna be providing more color. Let's just do it in this bottom area, and the way that we can actually maintain that slope, less time the focal points. So it just depends on what type of plant material we have in there and what is the landscape situation. It's just so many things together in the landscape. It has to be. Most of my recommendations is not be pruning this plant material so often. It's not creating bowls, not creating squares, not creating boxes. The most natural that we just let it grow. The plant material has a cycle. We just maintain it, just let it grow, trim it, let it go, trim it, let it grow, trim it. And I think it's what everybody should do.
Yeah. All right. So putting the right plant material to suit the climate, putting the right soil and fertilizer, all matters, right? How about water? Let's talk about irrigation and how you manage that.
Well, I'll chime in on this one. Is the other piece of the puzzle to what Ignacio was saying is, and I realize this is a California thing primarily, but it is something that does get factored in, is fire as well. So when we are picking plants, we are in the last several years having to think about the way that those grow vertically and how the amount of dead wood that's in there as well. So obviously that factors into water as well. And so in terms of water, new plants need water. They need a lot more water when they're renovated, and that can go both ways. I think it's plant depth and the amount of water are kind of the two top killers of plants, especially new ones. So the irrigation is the backbone of a healthy landscape. And so more often than not, you'll see, I've seen renovations, you have a quarter acre of turf or something, and they carved a big circle out in the middle and put native plants and feel really good about themselves, but they haven't done any renovation on the actual hardware. So, the software controls the hardware. Ben, you understand the software part, obviously, and I know you do on the hardware part too, but the key to, because we've mentioned Oso Valley, the key to the amount of savings was, this, obviously HydroPoint's system there, but as well as fixing things like brakes, simple things like brakes. matching precip rates out in the field. And if that's not taken into account prior to a renovation, it's going to create a disaster. It's not going to survive. You'll end up flood irrigating. The contractor will end up paying for replacement plants they shouldn't have had to. So you got to start, to me, on that software hardware place before you get it, into the fun stuff with the plants.
Yep. So Ignacio, when you inherit a new account, it either has a smart control system that has maybe internet access, or it's just a series of manual mechanical timers. Talk about the differences in managing water based on those two systems.
When we have that problem, I mean, we need to see what it is. Sometimes, and I've seen this like a lot. They install these expensive smart controllers, and it's like, oh, you're gonna be saving a lot of water just installing these controllers. But sometimes, even in areas that there's no reception, and the antennas are inside the box. It's like, okay, so this is not gonna work, right? So you need to check. You need to do irrigation inspection, and what it is, what's the problem, and some HOAs, there's we're wasting a lot of water and we have smart controls. Yeah, but do you guys inspect the irrigation to make sure laterals are okay, the sprinkler heads are fine, there's no broken material in the slopes, on the plant material, on the areas? And I was like, no, yes, we did that. How about the efficiency? Do we have good coverage? And all the stuff. It's just a lot of things, but I think the main key is just make sure that we have inspections, irrigation inspections, like frequently, just to make sure that everything is working properly. Mm-hmm. And obviously, do things right. If you're going to install a smart controller, make sure that it is going to be installed properly.
So Matt, when you inherit an account, or whether you're consulting to an existing account, and they've got manual timers versus anything smart or no central control, how do you advise them? How do you put a plan together for them to manage in that environment? And then what are the benefits they'd get if they went to something more 21st century?
First of all, I'd ask them, if we change it out, can I have one of them? Because I want to hang it in my irrigation museum in the garage. But I would, for them, again, it's putting the community on the scale. Let's say that those old timers are performing adequately, but there's another massive issue in the community. So I'd want to go in order of priority for them. But the advice to them would be, you have a system it's worked for a period of time. Here's where it's costing you money not doing this. Board of directors, like most, are made up of human beings, and human beings are driven by money in many scenarios. So it's like, hey, okay, so if we were to recommend improving the system, here's how much it would cost, here's how much you would save. Additionally, on the contracting side, for the contractors, they're going to go around and make these adjustments every day on every timer. It's not going to happen because they just physically can't do it. Otherwise, they're going to double the cost to you. Is that what you want? No. So there's a responsibility, I think, as homeowners, as good citizens, to sort of embrace any measure we can that does make the community more sustainable, and really taking out some of the human condition which requires dollars, because as we know, is minimum wage is continuing to go up and the dollars continue to go up, and you can either have someone go do it for you manually, which is much more expensive, or have it automated, and it's just a good practice to be automated. So I think it's just, again, I would first advise, is that your highest priority in the community? It may not be, but it's going to be one of them. So let's put the fire out that's in the corner of the room and then address this, second, or that may be the fire, depending on where they're at.
You also get involved with your customers. Maybe they're doing a redesign and you are asked to design a new irrigation control system from the ground up. What do you look for when you're putting those plans together?
It depends, again, on the community. Like if there's a lot of grade changes, if there's slopes, if there's different things, then we take into account what would be the best fit in terms of that specific community. If you've got, in Southern California, there's a lot of grade changes, a lot of variances. So you need some of the, very specific offerings that WeatherTrack has in terms of flow management and things. But again, it's assessing what the community needs and what they'll use, because you need smart people to use smart controllers. And so, I mean, we see on a large majority of the communities that we come in and start advising is that the smart timers are not programmed correctly. And as a result, the client says, well, these things don't work. I just want to go back to the thing that just turns them on and turns them off. So it has to be, you have to have smart people managing these smart systems. And I do think, again, it's really, really important that contractors communicate the results. Contractors are not good at bragging. They're really good at kind of, saying, hey, we can fix something, and then they do it. And they never come back and say, hey, look at this great win we had, because that's what they're like building blocks for future projects. And so I'm always encouraging the contractors when they do something well, and if we're on the project, we actually brag about them, but that they brag about themselves. Hey, it's not bragging if it's true. Here's what we did, and it really does set the tone for another successful future project.
When you're designing new systems, how do you decide whether you're going to put in conventional wire or whether you're going to put in TwoWire? And how do you decide whether you're going to use flow sensing and master valves or not?
Well, in terms of TwoWire, it just depends, again, on the community. I mean, we work with new communities that are being built that are TwoWire already. It depends what the scenario is. Is a TwoWire, does it make sense for the community? Is it easier? Does it set us up for future growth? And if it's a conventional wire system, that it just all depends on the community. Andrew Chase, who was on this a couple weeks ago, is our water management kind of lead guy. So I rely on him to those answers. So Ignacio, I don't know if you want to chime in on that as well.
Yeah, I think it's just all depends on the community. I mean, now I think like 3 months ago, we just took over a community, beautiful community, right? It's right there by the beach, but the company who installed the controllers and the irrigation system, they just didn't do like really good job. So they actually put conventional irrigation controllers and TwoWires, and some of them they're just loop, and it's like, oh, it doesn't make sense. And sometimes it's just the contractors, they don't do what they need to do, and I don't know, it's just now that we actually are responsible for that, we just go back to the board and say, okay, we're not going to be able to correct this until you guys spend this money. Sometimes it's just budget, and they say, well, we can do this installation for this amount of budget, and they see the comparison bid, and it's like, oh, great, we're gonna be saving 50% here, just do it. But at the end of the day, they don't realize that it's going to be a problem for them. It's just all depends, and we have to kind of bring that to their attention that it was not properly corrected. Otherwise, we're just going to be in trouble.
In most landscaped communities, especially in Southern California, where the irrigation season is long, the top 3 expenses to that association may be the management fees, it may be the maintenance contractor fees, and it may be water, right? So the balance between how much can I save on my water bill could be either reinvested into better maintenance practices or just put more money into the reserves of the HOA. Steve, Matt, how do you balance that? How do you help them have that conversation about lowering water use and what to do with the savings? Do they reinvest it in the landscape, or do they put it in reserves to save for a rainy day?
Well, hopefully they give it to us, but no, I'm just kidding.
There you have it.
No, you're exactly. I mean, 70% of HOA budgets go towards landscape related costs, 70%. And what's amazing is that a lot of boards, they'll hire, our communities will hire an attorney to write a letter about a basketball hoop, but they wouldn't, hire an expert to oversee 70% of their budget. And it's always kind of baffling to me that, that's not clear. But what I would say is that in terms of if you do get those savings and they are shown and they are bragged about, and you say, hey, we saved $43,000 on irrigation and this wasn't a magic trick, here's what we did, right? Here's what happened, here's what Harvest did, and here's where so we can expect that next year. Don't take that money and drop your dues. Take that money and reinvest it in new plant material that's going to reduce labor over time, those kind of things. And by doing that, you start to see the community really, really improve. That is a sidebar comment about lowering or keeping your dues flat. That's about the worst thing you can do for your HOA. I know it feels really good in the short term, but it's really going to end up costing you a lot down the road. the contractors have to get their increases so they can, pay their people appropriately. So it's important at the board level that there is a 3 to 5% increase, something every year, so it can be built back into the landscape. But the savings, the wins that happen in the landscape, especially in terms of water, because that's like the biggest knob you can turn, it should be reinvested in the community and to make sure that those future home sales stay high.
So in your experience, what are some of the results you've actually seen through the implementation of smart control when it's done right, when it's properly programmed and when it's properly dialed in? What kind of savings can you expect?
Well, I'll speak to two specific examples that Ignacio already mentioned. Oso Valley Greenbelt, which has been featured before, has 60 plus controllers. They were on a conventional system before that was just, really, really bad shape. And they had, galvanized pipe that was leaking and all those different things. And they were spending, upwards of, $400,000 a year on water. And which is not a small number. That was about 10 years ago. And with the introduction of, weather tracks, as well as fixing some of that galvanized pipes and getting the nozzles right and those kind of things, they normalize right around $200,000 a year, and that's been going on for a decade. That's not a magic trick. Ocean Ranch, which he also mentioned, their water bills dropped 70%. And again, that is a huge credit to your product, but it also is a credit to Harvest and the team, and a great board of directors and landscape committees there as well, seeing the vision behind it. And so it wasn't just plug the clock in, program it correctly. There was other steps, but I can tell you right there, that's two off the top examples of upwards of 50 to 70%. On average, I think it's closer to 30, but it's 50 to 70 is sort of my extreme examples.
So in Southern California, water agencies have, several charters, one of which is to, reliably and safely protect the water supply and deliver that to their customers so that they can ensure its viability, right? There are times when, based on drought conditions, they move into restrictions. Can you talk a little bit about how you're managing restrictions and what you do to comply with those restrictions?
Go ahead, Nacho.
What are we doing? Now in a lot of communities that are that their system is actually old, and we do the inspection. We always recommend it if there's depends on the area. It's like we're talking about the same situation. Like the plant material, the irrigation, and all that stuff. It just all depends on the situation. So I'm working with the South Coast Water District, which is one of the hottest water district in Southern California, and they always call me, hey, your irrigation system is actually is leaking, is running on the street. How are we going to resolve that? So we're constantly converting sprinkler heads to a drip system. Drip system. I know it's not 100% efficient, but it's the closest that we can install to prevent those wasting the water and preventing the runoff. So we're doing that a lot. It's probably the last 6 years, and also trying to implement the MP rotors, the high efficiency nozzles, which is helping a lot. That's that, and just making sure that we have everything installed properly. Having good irrigation, have a good coverage, and selecting the best plant material for the environmental. We don't want to plant material that requires a lot of water, because obviously the sprinkles, the water is going to be on and on and on like the grass. And a lot of communities where we're doing is just removing a lot of turf. We are getting advantage of getting rebates. And again, we're just working with the client, working with the communities, and just educating them, let them know that there's rebates available, and what we can do with those rebates. Sometimes it's not even, they don't have even to spend anything. The rebates pays for the project. And especially right now, and also about the Greenbelt, we're doing a project like that. There's a park that nobody uses. Actually, in the middle of the park is a village. It's like useless. We just going and mowing every day. Every week, and it's just a waste, fertilizer and just water and all that stuff. So we're doing that project, and it's going to be a even more savings in water for that community.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, I could have this conversation with you guys for another hour or two, but we've got a time limit, and I do want to let you know we probably have some questions queued up. Before we go to questions, can you give us some advice? What are some best practices for managing an HOA landscape?
Well, I kind of alluded to them before, Ben, but I would say 99% of communities don't have a plan with achievable goals. The 1% Monarch works with. Hopefully people are laughing at my bad jokes, but it really is having a plan, creating goals. So here's what we want to achieve. You know, we would like to reduce water consumption by 20%. That's a board directive that now allows the team to put together, how are we going to do that? We're going to reduce turf, we're going to change out plant material, we're going to upgrade the timers. The second part is building a team. If you know, there's no bad teams, there's only bad leaders, right? That's what Jocko Willink said in his book Extreme Ownership, is that in terms of having a team, you have to have a team that's got good leadership. You have to identify who's going to quarterback that team depending on, you know, what the situation is. But anything of value in your life is going to be accomplished through a team. So you have to build a team, and then you have to implement. I always say that in HOAs, tabling is a dirty word, especially when it comes to water. You know, water is an emergency. It's a finite resource. We can't make any more of it, and that we need to treat it that way. And so the answer is not just turn up the water if something's going on. It could be soil related or the wrong plant choice, but creating goals, building teams, and implement. I could add a fourth point, brag, which I already told about, because that sets you up for future projects. But I think those would be my little tidbits.
All right, Ignacio.
Yeah, I always said, you know, just the best practices is just look for the problems, look for the solution, and make it happen. And so I said, it's just, and I'm gonna say that all the time.
Good.
Because if you find the solutions, you don't resolve them, you're not gonna do anything. You're not gonna resolve anything. So that's what I say all the time, and just make it happen. It's in my head.
All right, I'm going to go back to Meg Mason now and let us hear from the audience if there are questions. Meg, what do we got?
There sure are. So just a reminder here, in the GoToWebinar control panel under the questions section, go ahead and enter your questions in there. We literally have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to go through them really fast. For those of you that do put a question in and we are not able to answer it live on here, we're going to go ahead and just reach out to you individually after the webinar. And so don't worry, we will get to you at some point, possibly just not live. So the first question that did come in, what are some of the top reasons that both HOAs and landscape maintenance contractors choose weather track controllers over other smart irrigation controllers?
Go ahead, Nacho. Let you get that one.
I mean, in my opinion, I think it's the best material, the best controller in the industry. I always recommend HydroPoint. I mean, it's easy to friendly, you know, to manage it, to program it. I mean, obviously you have to know, you know, what are you doing, but I mean, it lasts for a long time, and the customer service is great.
Awesome. We have another question in here from Bill in Northern Virginia. Do you have any suggestions for measuring water usage in real time?
Well, that's where my parents are from, Northern Virginia. So shout out to Annandale High School. That's where they both went. In real time, there's a lot of really cool, you know, gadgets out there. You know, so that would be, again, I'd probably leave that to you, Ignacio, that there's software-based solution, but there's also some hardware-based solutions. So what are you recommending to your clients for that?
It will be probably just to real time. It's just probably be just read meters. You know, read meters will help you to and the data. You know, we have so much data now that we can actually easily find out how much usage that we have every day. You know, especially with the reports the weather track provides is easy.
So with flow sensors and master valves, you can get.
Correct.
Right. Again, it depends I don't know if Bill's talking on a commercial setting or if that's more of a residential setting, but yeah, flow sensors and master valves are kind of no-brainers at this point. It should be almost packaged with your timers.
Perfect. So we actually are out of time right now. Amanda, we did get your question. We will be reaching out to you separately after this webinar. So I just wanted to kind of wrap things up. Ben, Matt, Ignacio, thank you all for joining here today. Do you guys have any last minute comments, wise tips and tricks you'd like to share with us all?
I'm going to thank our
I'm
guests.
not going to share my tricks.
Okay, you're not going to share your tricks.
I would
just like,
go ahead, Nacho, sorry.
Like I will just, recommend to everybody, it's just like, again, just make it happen. It's just all what it is. Just make it happen.
Yeah, and I would just close by just saying, as Chief Encouragement Officer, is that keep in mind that what you're doing really matters. The green industry, all this technology, wake up every day knowing that it really matters. This is bigger than just a job or collecting a paycheck. We've got the opportunity to really set up the next generation for success. So that's exciting.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Here's some contact information if anyone has any questions or would like to reach out to HydroPoint, Monarch Environmental, or Harvest Landscape. The URLs are there as well as email address. And then just a plug for next week's Thought Leadership webinar. We're talking all about green roofs, everything you need to know about green roofs, how they're the benefits and implementation of them. So hopefully everyone will join us next week. We'll be sending out a recording of this webinar for anyone who registered. And thank you again, everyone, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Yeah, Ben.
Adios, amigos.
Thanks, Ben.